What's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Ask Jimmy Smith. Today, I am excited to be bringing you a little bit of a different video than I typically do. Normally, I'm talking about e-commerce or Amazon or even other types of streams of income, and I'm doing some training. But in this video, I'm actually going to be sharing with you in a webinar that I did with a man named Josh Tolley, whom I've talked about on this channel multiple times before. He wrote my favorite business book called Evangelpreneur, which I actually have right here. Let the camera zoom in on this. There we go. Evangelpreneur, Josh Tolley. It's my favorite business book, and I highly recommend anybody out there to read it. I'll put a link in the description here for you. But I did this interview with Josh because he has owned multiple businesses. I believe dozens of businesses over his life. He owns quite a few now as well. And he believes that this is a great way to grow wealth. And I obviously happen to agree with him. I do as much as I can to grow my streams of income. But the way that he thinks about buying businesses is something different than I've ever thought of before. And I was just really excited to do this video with him. It was actually done in a program that I run with Josh. It's called the Entrepreneurial Learning Institute, or ELI. You can find that information at my website, AskJimmySmith.com. You can click to see the ELI portion of the website. But ultimately, we used this hour of a presentation to talk about a specific training webinar for buying businesses, buying existing businesses. And Josh goes through the statistics as why it's so important. He goes through so much amazing information as to how to do it, what you should be looking for, what are the very first few steps you should be doing, and even how you can obviously utilize companies to help you find businesses that can grow, that you can buy from them. So I'm just really excited. I wanted to bring this to you because I believe that it helped me tremendously and looking at buying businesses in different ways, as well as just looking at ways that potentially I can grow my wealth and my portfolio of businesses, hopefully. And so, yeah, I hope that this video blesses you. There are going to be some things maybe I mentioned that apply only to that group that you can just ignore. Feel free to ask questions below. But this is just such a great webinar packed with so much information. I know it's a longer video, but I truly believe that it can change lives. And Josh does have a website where you can go if you are interested in learning more about what he does. We do talk about how you can do this yourself, but he does mention it at the end of the video. I wanted to give it to you at the beginning, as well as put the link in the description. But it's Kingsbridge Brokers.com. And so he helps, his company helps to find businesses, helps you to not just find those businesses to buy, but also helps you to continue to grow and nourish that business moving forward. And I figured it would be something amazing to bring to everyone here to learn about it and to really think differently on how you can use your 401k or your IRA money. Even if you don't have anything in your savings, but you do have some retirement, you can use that money to buy businesses. There's so much in here that's just amazing. I'm super excited to bring it to you. If you can't tell, I'm just repeating my words now, but thank you. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this webinar with Josh. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a blessed day. Excited to have you on.
Man, I am excited to do this. This is a topic that is really kind of near and dear to me because of the impact it can have. So yeah, I'm excited to do this.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I know Brenda's here, so good evening, Brenda. We had a few more people that have registered, so I think we're waiting for them to hop on. But yeah, Josh, just I guess, so tonight, for everybody that may or may not know, I posted it in the group, and we talked about it last week, where we had a lot of questions with Josh for how to buy businesses. And really, there's so much that goes into it that Josh had the awesome idea to do a whole session on it. So that is what the purpose of tonight's call is how to buy businesses, maybe what you should look for, kind of the typical process, that kind of stuff. So obviously, Josh is the master of it. He's been doing it. I don't know how long you've been buying businesses, Josh, but I know it's been a while that you've done it, and you do it for a lot of people. So really excited to have you on to do that. So hey, Cassie Joe, I see that you joined. Awesome to have you here. But yeah, Josh, so what kind of things do you, I guess, give us a background on what you've done from a business standpoint for buying businesses? Like, where did that start? How did you really come up with that idea, and just some of that background?
Well, I wish it was my idea. It existed way before I was around, but I've been doing it for a while. So I like to tell people that I've been starting, growing, building, selling, buying businesses for about 25, almost 26 years now. I don't think I bought my first one 26 years ago, but it's been a while. And the idea is really this concept of, unless your business is really, really unique, it's already out there in some way, shape, or form, right? So that's the first realization. So let's just kind of shelve that. It's already out there. The second realization is starting a business is hard. Just the idea of starting it. There's so many processes to go through and things you don't think of and all that sort of stuff. It's also extremely expensive, and the failure rate is insanely high. Now, it's better than being employed. I still stand by that. You know, that whole analogy of, well, 8 out of 10 businesses fail. That's right. But 9.5 out of 10 employees fail. So you're already way ahead of employment. So even if you're starting one, way better than being employed. But there's no denying that businesses have a high failure rate. So if you take that, it's hard, it's expensive, it has a high failure rate, and there's already somebody doing it, and you kind of look at that objectively, you can quickly start to say, well, why would I want to start yet another one? Why don't I just buy one that's already in existence? And I've been talking about this for so long that it's kind of interesting to see that there are a few more people talking about it now. But back when I started, man, it was like a lonely reed out in the ocean. But really, there's so many advantages, right? So let's just kind of run through some of them. It's not as hard to start. Why? Because somebody else already started it. It already exists. So you don't have to, hope this works or test the market out or, get city approval or whatever it is for whatever business you're doing. It's already there. The second part is it's typically less expensive. Really. And I think we're going to spend a lot of time there, so I won't dwell on that one. But that's the second advantage. The third advantage is that the success rate is actually higher. So as much as it's true that 8 out of 10 businesses fail, what we fail to tell people is that if a business is 5 years old or older and they're doing somewhere around $1 million in revenue and higher, depending on the industry, that the success rate of those business, the success rate is 9 to 9.5 out of 10. So 90 to 95% successful. The reason for that is all of the hard stuff's already been done. They've already lined up customers. They've already built a reputation. They already got employees. They already got contracts. They already got systems. Like everything's already there. So the success rate is just through the roof. Now, back to the more expensive versus less expensive. This is the part that really is kind of the mind blower. If you look at the average business and what it costs to start, depending on what it is you're trying to do, you're looking at 5, 10, 20, 80, 100, 200, $2 million. It's not cheap. But when you talk about buying a business, it's not as if that is more expensive. It's really not. And typically how you buy a business is, well, there's a few different ways to value the business, but how you buy the business is you find a business that you like, asterisk, not in an industry that you know, like, or love. That's not what I'm talking about. A business that meets the profile of what you're trying to buy the business for, right? You find a business that meets that profile, and then the creation of the deal is extremely fluid. It's extremely fluid. When you go and buy a house or a commercial real estate property, right? It's kind of locked in. There's some creativity, but it's mostly locked in. Your realtor's going to run comps, and you're going to see what the average square foot of that house is in that neighborhood, and ballpark maybe 5% either direction. That's what you're paying. And how do you pay for it? Well, you either pay cash or you get a mortgage. That's it. Or maybe you could do like land contract, but it's still, that is your debt payment, right? That's how it works. Well, with business, it doesn't work that way at all. You can make a business deal as creative as you can mentally come up with, right? I've done deals that have included land for a telescope in South America because I wanted to have access for a telescope and a ham radio antenna. And as long as both parties agree to it, okay, you're good. You could have deals where you buy a business for literally no money down. And this isn't some sort of how to buy real estate with no money down. That's not what I'm talking about. But you buy it with no money down, and the seller, because they want to pace out their taxable liabilities or whatever their reason, just agrees to take payments or royalties on that business. Okay, cool. I was working a deal here in Texas where the guy has a business that's quite successful, does well over $1 million a year. His take home's about $250,000, and it's on about 40 acres. Right? Well, the business footprint is only 5 of those acres. He's selling the business for $1 million. Wait a second. By the way, selling the business includes the 40 acres. So you have a business doing over $1 million. You have 40 acres that, even if we're going to say sells for $5,000 an acre, right?
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you start realizing, wait a second, buying this business literally pays for itself. Keep the business part on the 5 acres that operates, sell the other 35 acres. That was the money that you had to buy the bit. Like, it's duh. So there's a lot of creativity when it comes to how to structure the business deal. And what's even better, and maybe we'll get to this in a minute, but what's even better is what the IRS is allowing people to do with their retirement funds in order to facilitate this.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. So the retirement fund side of things, I guess. So the first couple of steps, then you find a business that you like, or at least that meets kind of what you're looking from a business standpoint, what meets your C ultimately, right? Can I take it even one step even more basic? Like, how do you even go about finding those? For those that are just completely brand new, how do you even go about finding that?
So the thing you have to realize is every business is for sale. And that's really important because it's true. Not every house is for sale, right? Somebody might have fallen in love in that house or had their first baby in that house, and they're not selling it. But what's the purpose of every business? To make money. So every business is for sale. You walk in there and say, hey, I'm interested in buying this hotel. Somebody's going to say, I'm not interested in selling, but what were you thinking? Because it's why you own it. Mm-hmm. So you just realize that there's a lot more availability with that. With that being said, there's typically 2 or 3 ways to go about finding a business. The first way, the most common way, and I would say the least advantageous, let's put it that way, is a lot of these online business for sale websites. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of those is because by the time they're on there, they already have a broker, which means somebody already put in their mind how much that business is supposed to sell for. Does that mean that the business is worth that? No. And when you look at a lot of brokerages, they're really in it just like a realtor. Find 100 businesses to list and let time and exposure sell 4, 5, or 6 of these things, and that's how they make their profit. So they're in it mostly for that commission, right? They're not going to be really into creating a long-term interesting deal where you get comic books and the other guy gets access to the rooftop gym and all the neat sort of stuff you can do in a structured sort of deal. They're in it for a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, give me my commission and I'm out. So because they've already kind of tainted the mind of the seller, that's typically an obstacle that is hard to overcome. Not impossible, but hard. The next place to go is really to anybody who owns a business. So here's some statistics. Right now, most of the businesses in this country are owned by baby boomers. Baby boomers are looking to retire. The idea when they started the business that selling the business was going to be their retirement plan. But what we've discovered is most businesses won't sell. Now, that's bad news for a lot of sellers, but it's really good news for buyers. And it doesn't mean the business is bad. It doesn't. But what has happened is this next generation that's coming up, somewhere between my age and Jimmy's age, and that sort of generation has no desire to own a business. Whereas previous generations did. I mean, people came over on the Mayflower to start businesses, for goodness sakes. Well, the next generation doesn't have that. So you can have a wildly successful company, a great company, profitable and everything, just won't sell simply because there's not enough people to buy it. Well, that's a huge advantage for the buyer, because that would be like houses. If there's 100 million houses for sale and 2 million buyers, what happens to the price of houses? Right? Mm-hmm. So you can pick up some great businesses right now for dirt cheap. If you've ever been to our St. Louis office, and Jimmy, I know you've been there, right kind of kittywampus to that office, which ironically I still have, even though I live in Texas. Kittywampus to that office, there was a bakery, and that was a donut shop. That donut shop sold over 50,000 donuts a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it is now sitting there empty because they couldn't find a buyer.
That's sad.
I was this close, man. If I could have talked my wife into no more businesses this month. But literally, and we even talked to them. They're like, we can't find a buyer. 50,000 donuts a week.
Wow. That's insane.
And there's tons of deals like this. You could have offered that guy 10 cents on every donut for the next 10 years, and it would have been way better than just literally shutting it down, and now it's just sitting there. Mm. So those deals are out there, and that's kind of that first step. Now, in determining which one you like, and if you're just watching this and you've never heard me before, I am very opposed to people being in businesses that they know, like, or love. It keeps you extremely limited, extremely blinded to growth and opportunities. But like Jimmy was saying, and I was saying, now when I say like, it's not personally like, it matches your objective. So in finding those businesses, you kind of have to ask yourself, what's the objective? And as you grow and buy more and more companies, you're going to realize that every one you buy might be for a different reason. I would strongly recommend, given that most of the people watching this are going to be first-time buyers, and given the political and economic climate we happen to be in right now, I would strongly recommend that most people buy a recession-resistant business. That doesn't mean I don't like tech. Let that be your next one, right? But buy one that you know is going to be stable. So even if they shut down because of, COVID-27 or whatever, is coming in the future, there's still industries that continue to grow and thrive. Flooring is a great one. Why? Because everything you do, literally everything you do, unless you're in a car, look under your feet. What are you walking on? A floor. So it doesn't matter how bad the economy gets, you're going to need a floor. Doesn't matter how AI the world is, the robot's going to roll around on a floor. Trash, waste removal, concrete, cement, anything that's we still have to do it. And in some cases, what do nations do to get out of recession? They spend money on infrastructure. Great. Then it would be great to be in the infrastructure category when a country says, okay, even Russia and China do it. It's not just us. Okay, well, the economy's bad. Let's approve a building plan for $400 billion for redoing the highways. Well, it's not like one company gets that $400 billion. They have to, by law, split it up amongst a number of companies. Be one of those companies. So, so once you find a business that kind of fits your objective, then you just start approaching companies, or if you're smart, have somebody like me do it, because you want to go in there and kind of position yourself so you can negotiate that deal to the advantage of both the seller and the buyer. But typically that's going to be less of a financial strain. So that's the next step, is start that conversation.
Okay. And whenever you do go in there and talk to the buyer, whether it's, yourself or your company, Josh, whatever, what is kind of that conversation like? Where do you start that conversation other than, hey, are you interested in selling the business or something? What's that conversation look like for anybody that's trying to do it on their own?
A little of it is industry, kind of dependent, but it typically goes compliment, compliment, compliment. Got a crazy question for you. Have you ever thought of selling the business or transitioning out? And they'll tell you that, people aren't shy about that. A lot of people, oh man, I would love to. That's the most common response I get now. Oh, I'd love to. Because there's nobody buying them. There's nobody buying them. I'm part of the International Business Brokers Association, and they even put out a stat that says in that smaller category, some statistics state that 95% of businesses for sale will never sell. So because of that, literally just ask. You just ask. Now, once you ask, then it gets to the creative part of how much are they going to want, how much they think it's worth, how much you think it's worth, and how you determine, what it's really valued at. But just start the conversation and hey, are you interested in a transition out?
Is it a problem if you ask and they say, oh, I'd love to? Is that kind of a scary thing? I don't know. Just because I hear that, I'm like, well, why would somebody want to sell the business other than maybe retirement, right?
That's a great question. That's a great question. But there's lots of reasons why people would want to transition out of a business. And it's not always because it's not profitable. I mean, some business models, if you go to business school right now, they teach you that's the goal. Build it and then sell it. That's the liquidity event. So it all depends on the seller. Some people want to move on to do different things. Sometimes it's a geographically limited company and they don't have the ability to take it with them to wherever their husband got transferred, or, who knows? There's a lot of reasons other than why would somebody want to sell a profitable business. Some of the best businesses to sell are the profitable ones. So that way the seller gets a reward and the buyer is walking into something where they know they're going to put money in their pocket.
Okay. So from a cost perspective, what should anybody looking to buy a business expect to either pay? How should they even look at maybe evaluating the businesses? Any suggestions there?
That's where this thing becomes a sticky wicket. If you even Google how to value a business, you're going to come up with a bazillion different methods of doing it, and none of them are going to be claiming to be the right way. That makes this a little bit of a tricky way to do it. There are some common ways. The most common ways are looking at what's called EBITDA, which is pretty close to net profit. It's earnings before interest, taxation, all that sort of stuff.
Appreciation.
Yeah. So it's kind of close to net profit. Well, it's kind of common to take that number and then multiply it by what's called an industry multiple, right? So let's say it's a hair salon. Well, that might be a multiple of 3. So let's say they have an EBITDA of $100,000, multiply it by 3, $300,000. That's never going to really paint the whole picture, but it's kind of an easy jumping off point. There's a few other ways to look at it too, though. And what's, really important to realize is when you're buying a company, it's not just the bottom line that you're buying. You're also buying what does that business have the potential to do, or how does that business add to your current portfolio of companies, right? So we sold a company to a guy who already made a product. We said, hey, the product that you make, somebody else makes the internal workings of this product. You should buy this company. It would make you money over the long term, and it saves you money as soon as you sign the paper. And that made sense. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. So they grew their company, their existing company, by acquisition. There's what's called a roll-up strategy, which we can get to in a minute. But that's another sort of why you would buy a company and how you would determine the value. That's not going to be a straight-up EBITDA play either. But most often, especially for first-time buyers in that kind of small business category, you're going to be buying it pretty much on a multiple of revenue. That's either going to be a multiple of gross, a multiple of what's called SDE, or seller's discretionary earnings, or it could be a multiple of EBITDA. It's going to be a multiple of something. There's also going to be a few other things added into that equation. One of them is called goodwill. And if you're thinking, well, what is goodwill? It's pretty much whatever you think it should be. Which makes this process a little sticky. Let's, for example, say that you're a hair salon and you've been around for 10 years and the community knows you and you're always in the Thanksgiving Day parade and you cut Britney Spears' hair once in 1984. All this sort of stuff that kind of makes you cool. Well, you get to sell that coolness.
Okay.
That has a value to it. So their side of the negotiation could say, okay, well, we do 100 grand, 3 times EBITDA is going to be 300,000, but we have this really cool goodwill and we think that's worth another $75,000. Now it's up to your side to say, I don't really think it's worth that. Maybe it's worth 25,000 because sure, name recognition helps me, but I don't think it's worth 75, right? So there's a lot of back and forth go-betweens, what's really there. The bottom line is you want to create a situation that after you purchase the company, it's going to relatively quickly provide you what you're trying to buy it for, like whatever that reason is. And there's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at that process and gauge, am I getting what I'm after? You'll have sometimes where people buy a business for way more than it's actually worth on paper. And it happens sometimes on a big scale and it'll make the news, like Nabisco buys Oscar Mayer. Well, actually Kraft bought Oscar Mayer, but Kraft buys Oscar Mayer for $1 billion more than what it's valued at. Well, number wise, why would they do that? But they're thinking, wait a second, they're a meat processor, not just a meat supplier. If we have them in our back pocket, that means our Kraft singles, our, Sara Lee cakes or whatever, they get all of that stuff kind of included with why they're buying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
it makes sense to me too, just from the standpoint of, even if you have like certain connections, maybe you worked in like a school system your whole life or whatever, and you can buy some business that could be a supplier to the school system. You've got those connections. It makes sense to me as a good reason, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. And goodwill, would that be kind of also considered the branding, or is that separate?
Oh, it's very much the branding.
Okay.
It's very much the branding, which is why in the BOL, every business is what? A brand.
Yeah.
Like that's 9 out of 10 times, once you get past $10 million businesses, they're really buying the brand.
Okay.
Because typically that's just not some single mom trying to provide for her kids. That's typically a company that already exists is buying another company. Mm-hmm. Well, they've already got warehouses. They've already got forklifts. They've already got trucks. What they're after is that name and everything that goes along with it, which kind of smoothly leads into, what are you going to do with a business once you buy it? Are you going to buy it to hold it? Are you going to buy it to flip it? I tell people all the time, man, if you think buying homes to flip them is profitable, flip a company. Flip a company. Because, dude, 1, your down payment's way less typically. 2, you get to add goodwill. like you have all these real estate dudes who are all like, well, there's what's called forced depreciation, and that's when we improve the property, put in, landscaping, remodel the doors, and forced depreciation. Bubba, if I have a concert in the parking lot, that's now goodwill, and I don't go up by just what the concert cost me because everything's by a multiple. If I spend $10,000 on a concert, and this is a loose example, but if I spend $10,000 on a concert and I'm in a 3 times multiple EBITDA, that $10,000 concert made me $30,000 just by having it. So yeah, there's way more potential there, way more potential. And let's talk about another thing before I forget. The other benefit when you buy a company is there's so many things in that balance sheet or in that operation that could actually pay for itself. It could pay for itself. Like if you're looking at a company, right? and you're noticing that the owner is paying themselves $400,000 a year, and you're thinking, I don't need $400,000 a year right now. That's not the goal. Well, that's $400,000 a year that you could use to pay the note that you bought the business with. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, very, very commonly, there's expenses that don't need to be there. Well, now it's literally paying for itself. The same is true with management, right? Like, let's say you already have a side gig, or you're already, you're a nurse at a high school or something, and you just want to start making money. Well, let's say the owner paid himself $100,000. And you're saying, Josh, I don't want to work in that auto mechanic shop. I don't know nothing about that auto mechanic shop. It's got 6 employees already. Can they just take care of it? Sure. And you know what you do? You take that $100,000 that the owner was paying himself. You give yourself $50,000. So now you just gave yourself a $50,000 raise.
Yeah.
But you take that other $50,000 and you promote somebody to manager and give them a $20,000 bump. Right? Now they're happy as a lark, and let's be honest, probably know how to run the business than the owner that you bought it from anyway.
Right.
Not only that gives you $30,000 in cash to market and grow that brand and that presence. So your income went up. You have a great manager in place, so you don't have to worry about this thing, and you increase the operating capital to expand the thing, all based on not even improving the business, but just taking what the owner had and divvying it up in a different way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for a lot of people, I assume, listening to this right now, it sounds extraordinarily easy, right? I mean, obviously, it's the way that you talk, it sounds super simple for a lot of people, and it gets everyone excited. My question is, what do people do that have maybe never run a business before, and they're trying to get into this? Maybe they found one, or they're going to work with you to find one. What are your suggestions? Obviously, we're in Eli right now, the Entrepreneurial Learning Institute, but we all have this training, but there still might not be practical applications of it. So what are your suggestions? If you buy a business, now you're dealing with everything all at once. Any suggestions there? Yeah,
actually. First, I would amp up the Eli side of things. Don't just count on Eli. We have what's called a certified business operator course. It's a week long. Get into that thing. But there's other things you can do too. We actually have what's called a first time buyers program, where you can get our assistance on finding, identifying, and buying a company. We have in addition to Purple Monkey Garage, I have another company called Kingsbridge, and it is a business broker. So Kingsbridge helps you find, identify, negotiate, and purchase your company. But then as part of that first-time buyers program, PMG then comes along with you right from the close and says, okay, now how do we start getting this thing in place and growing and that sort of thing? And the best part about it is the business that you bought is the one that pays PMG. Awesome. So now that doesn't even necessarily have to come out of your personal pocket. So we really like that program because of what you just said. There are people who buy business and go, holy cow, I have no clue what I'm doing. And down it goes. And you don't want that. And to your point, I make it sound easy. It's not. I've just been doing this forever, so it looks easy, I guess. It's kind of like an airline pilot, right? That airline pilot, dude. And then your first lesson, you think you're going to die hitting a duck, right? They make it look easy. But overall, the concept is really simple. It's really simple. And even on how do you afford a business to buy, this is the best part, man. If you have 10 to 20% down, 10 to 20% down is all you need to buy most businesses.
Okay.
That's crazy. I mean, let's just do some simple math. Let's say you have $40,000, just for a number, and you want to make $40,000 a year. Well, $40,000 is 10% down on a $400,000 business. A $400,000 business, even running a 10% profit margin, is going to make you $40,000 a year. So with the same $40,000 that was just eating a hole in your mattress, losing to inflation, you can buy a company that will pay you 40 grand a year. And as you pay off that note, the equity that you have in that company is also accumulating. So now when you sell it for 400 grand, even if it never goes up. You sell it for 400 grand in 10 years, and you've made 400 grand over the course of 10 years. Nothing beats that.
Right.
Like, your mutual fund ain't going to do that. Your CDs aren't going to do that. And that's with zero growth. If that thing even grows 2% a year, good night. Good night. But the reason this works is because there's so many lenders, including the government, that will lend to buy a company because of the success rate that it has. And not only that, when you purchase a company, it's not going solely on your personal credit, your employment history, your assets, right? When you go and buy a house or a car, it's all about you. You have to have a 720 credit score. You have to have a job for 6 years. You have to have a bank account for 2 months, whatever. When you buy a company, what you're using is the existing company as the collateral, as the source of credit, as the track record, as the credit rating. So it's way more powerful for people who are trying to elevate themselves up in income brackets than other options that you have available, because that's all based on your credit. And I see all these YouTube videos, right? Like, increase your credit by $50,000 by doing this program. Bubba, you could have bought a business and made 50 grand a year for the same amount of money that you're putting on secured credit cards. And it's just, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And also, even if the business doesn't grow, like you said, if you sold it for the same amount, but more than likely, even if it doesn't technically grow, it should grow by at least inflation each year. So
right.
if you hold it for 10 years, I mean, that's going to be probably a double the size just by the strict amount of, dollar.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And that's not even talking about the tax advantages you get, or depending on where you put the business, there's economic opportunity zones where you don't pay state tax. And St. Louis is a great example of that. We were actually thinking about moving closer to the airport because there's economic opportunity zones where if you have your business in that zone because it betters the community, the state won't charge you.
I didn't know that. Oh, Josh? Oh, no. Oh, you're reconnecting. For while we're waiting for Josh, anybody that has questions, post them in the comments. But anyway, you're back, Josh.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. I'm stationary. I'm not in a car. But anyway, but what I was saying was that there's other advantages too. But you're absolutely right. Everything should actually it should grow organically without any sort of effort.
Right.
And if you just put a little bit of effort in, like I'll give you another example. We had a guy, he started his business late in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're never too old. But he didn't even get started until he was after 65. He's about 78 years old now, and he just doesn't have the energy to go grow it. He just doesn't. But it's clearing over $1 million a year. It's a great product. He's got over 100 locations that sell his product. He could easily double that. He just doesn't have the energy to go do it. Well, this is a business you could walk into, buy it for 10% down on a million. So that's 100,000. You buy it for $100,000. You go out, it's going to pay you more than that day one. So you make your money back in 6 months. You put that back in the drawer or the mutual fund, whatever you want to do. But now, if you just went out and got 5 more accounts a month, well, a year from now, you're running 40% higher profit. You just took your 200,000 a year. Now you're making 280. And it's based on something that he already put the legwork in to build the foundation for.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so crazy whenever you really think about the impact that it can have too. And even just the ability to then grow multiple different businesses over time, right? You could start to build a portfolio of those. And I don't want to get too far off into the weeds there, because that just for the purpose of this call. But
Right.
in terms of what should people be looking for as red flags in businesses? Like, what are the things that they should avoid? Are there certain types of businesses? I know you kind of mentioned right now looking for more recession-proof things than technology companies, so to speak. Like, you might want to avoid that right now, potentially, depending on your financial situation. But what are some of those red flags that people should look for?
Things that are dependent on supply chain issues out of Russia or Asia.
Okay.
Really? I have a guy who is in the auto glass industry, does over 100 million a year, and his business is grinding to a halt because all of the glass comes out of 4 countries, and all 4 of those countries are in places that are either locking down or supply chain issues. So that's really a big one, is supply chain. The other thing is if it's a high turnover business and you don't want to be in the business all the time. A trucking company, for example. I love transportation companies, love them. I think for a lot of people, they're a great business to own. But you have to realize that as much as you're a transportation company, you're also a hiring company. Every week you need to be hiring people. Why? Because drivers quit. It's notorious. Nobody wants to drive for one company for their whole life. So if you don't want to be actively engaged in hiring people every week, then that'd be a red flag. So the red flags are really largely dependent on why you're buying the business and what you expect it to accomplish. Now, there are big things like 4 years of constant loss, inventory turnover not happening quick enough. There's a turnover rate that you want to look at, stuff like that. There are some mathematical red flags, but that's actually secondary to kind of the when you're looking what should stick out to you sort of things.
Okay, perfect. And I assume if people had, what was the name of the company that you have? Kingsbridge. So I assume if you have Kingsbridge, that's kind of stuff that you look for too, to help people with that.
Yep.
What about for people that maybe they don't have, $40,000 to buy a business? Maybe they've got $5,000. What suggestions do you have for people? I mean, are there ways to buy businesses with that amount of money, or do you recommend, pooling with other people? What's your recommendation there?
Yes, yes, and yes. So first, is it possible to buy a business with that amount of money? Yes, it is. Yep, it is. You're going to have to get a little bit more creative on the deal structure. You might have to agree to lease from the owner some equipment over time or something, but you can still get in the game. Yes. The second part, do you recommend pooling together? Yeah, there are some rules to that. So always consult your licensed legal professional. But depending on who you're raising it from, how many people are raising it, there's some rules. You want to stay under 35 people. You want to, accredited investors versus non-accredited start to play in once you get above 35 people. And really what the business is for. Is it for buying speculative businesses? But that's a whole rabbit trail. But overall, yeah, I love the idea. I mean, there's nothing saying, you have $5,000, your brother-in-law has 7, your sister has 4, he has, 10. Let's pool this thing together and just proportionately own based on who the percentage you put in the pot. Absolutely. But one thing I do want to bring up that most people don't even think about, including people who buy and sell companies, is that you can use your 401k or your Roth IRA to actually buy a company. And when I say that, I'm not even talking about taking it out. I'm not talking about borrowing against it. I'm not talking about, when you take it out, you get hit with penalties, fines, fees, and taxes. Nope. The IRS allows you to do something that's really, really cool. Let's say you have $500 in your savings account, but you have this 401k thing that you've been contributing to, thinking it was dumb, and now it's got $60,000 in it. You can keep it in a qualified retirement vehicle, so now no payments, taxes, and penalties. You multiply that 60 by 10, you now have $600,000 to go buy a business. The SBA will back the 90% for your 10%. You go and buy a company. This is the simple version. Technically, what you do is you start a corporation. That retirement fund then buys the stock in that corporation. That corporation then goes and buys a company. But this is the simple version of that. You then buy that company, and you have to pay yourself a wage out of that business. But the gains on that business technically stay in the retirement account. So now, right, you're not paying taxes on those gains until you withdraw them at some point in the future, even if you sell the company.
Wow.
So now that actually opens up a window to a lot of people who are like, Josh, I don't have $2 to rub together. Do you have a 401k? Yeah, actually I do. That thing's been sitting over there with 16 grand in it. I totally forgot about that thing. So yeah, there's always options.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get it. So let's say you got 40 grand in the 401k or whatever it is.
Yes.
And then you can technically then get a business worth 400 that you would technically be paying 400 for?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I understood that properly.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So whenever you do that, you take the C Corp, or you get the C Corp organized, it buys all the stock, you put all 40 grand into there. How do you get then the $40,000 down payment for the business that you're purchasing?
That is your $40,000 down payment.
Okay.
So this is, it's genius, right? So let's say, forget it's you buying a company for a second. Let's say it's Tesla's issuing new shares, and that's what your 401k is going to buy, right? Mm-hmm. So you take your 401k, it buys Tesla shares, new issue. Otherwise, you're buying it from Bob, but new issue shares. That money then goes to Elon Musk to buy a rocket or something, mm-hmm. right? Well, this is working in the same sort of principle. Your 401k buys shares of Jimmy Inc. You just happen to run Jimmy Inc.
Okay.
So now you have $40,000 in your corporate pocket in cash, like real money. Mm-hmm. The retirement account balance still says 40,000 because it just bought stock in Jimmy Inc. The $40,000 that's now in your real pocket in cash, the SBA will multiply that by 10. So now you have $400,000.
Okay.
You buy a $400,000 business, that thing turns even a 10% return. You got your 40 grand back.
Wow. Okay. And then
now,
go ahead.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now all the gains then technically go into the 401k.
Yes.
As like their gains, if you want them to, or you can pay yourself more and get a Shyft policy or something. If you want.
Sure. And that's good plug. Good
right.
plug. But just like your gains in Tesla stock, right? Same sort of thing. You own the stock in U Inc. So the gain in equity value of those shares stays retained inside that qualified retirement vehicle.
Wow. That's crazy. I'd never knew that at all. So 40.
Now in full disclosure, that's not something we do because you need a special licensing for that. But we do have people who we work with who can do that for you. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And is there a type of 401k? Like, do you have to transition your traditional 401k to something else? Let's say it's still tied up with whatever employer that you had before. Do you have to transition to something else first, I assume, to be self-directed?
Yeah, you have to roll it over, but it is a qualified rollover. So you don't have the fees and stuff.
Perfect. And Brenda had asked,
you'll run into fees from the service provider, like, Edward Jones fees or whatever, but yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Brenda had asked how long that you think PMG would be there with you to grow the first time business.
Totally depends. Totally depends on the business. I mean, some people just want us, period. Hey, I just want to keep you. Some people are like, hey, give me to where I make my money back and then you guys can go. And that's fine too. It's just multiply the hands that you have, sort of thing, right? If you're going to grow a business, you're going to need more hands typically than the hands that were already there. Otherwise they would have done it. So PMG offers you an affordable way to add those extra set of hands in order to grow that business.
Okay. Now, on the Q&A last week on Friday, I was asked something along the lines of how much of your existing income should you put in, or your existing savings, so to speak, should you put in to buy a business? I said that I felt most comfortable with 50% of what I had, just because that left me plenty in case something went awful. I've got an emergency fund. But what is it that you suggest, Josh? I mean, is that a pretty standard, 50%, or are you like, hey, put 90% as much as you can into these things? Yeah. Where do you fall on that?
I think it comes back to your C and what you're expecting the business to do, right? So let's say I'm a single mom and I'm raising a kid. Well, I don't know why I say that. Dads work too. So let's say I'm a single dad. I'm not, but let's say I'm a single dad raising a kid and I make 50 grand a year and I have $40,000 in my 401k. How much would I put towards buying a business and gaining my freedom, getting out of my job and raising my kid? My personal opinion, all of it. All of it. It's way more secure than the job I'm in anyway. And that's what people have to realize. You're now captain of your own rowboat as opposed to first mate on somebody else's. All of that inventory and property and everything that comes with that transaction is now yours. And in many cases, even if this thing falls flat on its face, the inventory and equipment alone should be enough to get your 40 grand back. Like if you do this well, you can never make anything 100% risk free. But if you do this well, it's way more secure than employment and save. Mm-hmm. If you're not in that position and you're not trying to just gain freedom, 50% I think is pretty healthy, leaves you a cushion somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And then as you get better at this and you're just starting to accumulate companies, then it totally changes. Then it's, why are you buying it? Does it fulfill a different purpose? And then some people like myself tend to get addicted to buying companies, and I collect companies like Jay Leno collects cars.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting thing for me to think about. I think that's kind of more the direction that I'd want to go. Whenever I was in college, I remember wanting to have 30 rental properties by the time I was 30. And that's changed over the time where I think I want to have, I want to do that with businesses. Obviously I'm over 30 now, but I think that's what I want to do with businesses moving forward. So from the standpoint of buying multiple, how do you kind of manage that? I just have a general question for my own personal sake. How do you manage running multiple different types of businesses?
That's a great question. So if they're not related, it becomes a little bit more difficult. If you're doing somewhat of a roll-up strategy, and I guess this is a good segue into that topic. If you're doing a little bit of a roll-up strategy, then it kind of is self-fulfilling. As a matter of fact, if you do it right, it becomes easier the more companies you buy. So a roll-up strategy is this. Let's say you are a plumbing company, or you bought one, right? So you bought a plumbing company. It's got 3 trucks, but it doesn't have its own machine shop. It does have a receptionist and, of course, your own legal license, your own lawyer, your own accountant. Okay. You have $20,000 to grow your business. What most people will do is they'll go out and buy another truck and hire on another plumber. Dumb. A smarter way to do it is to find a $200,000 existing plumbing company, put your $20,000 down on it, and it's going to come with 4 more plumbers, another receptionist. Oh, and their shop has a machine shop in it. And get this, because they have a receptionist and you have a receptionist, you can eliminate one and that payment now stays in the company. Because they have an accountant and you have an accountant, you can eliminate one and now that payment stays in the company. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the lawyer, same thing with the license, same thing with, see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So now it's becoming easier, and there might be a great manager over there where now he manages the whole thing and you take off and you're no longer touching this thing at all. So that sort of strategy kind of makes it easier as you grow. If you're going to start buying companies that don't relate to each other, then it comes down to be the chairman of everything and the CEO of nothing, and getting the right people in those places to run those companies for you.
Okay. Okay.
But wait, hold on one second. Before you move on, you said something earlier that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
And that was this idea of getting 30 rentals by the time you're 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation not too long ago with a guy who's in real estate. And he was talking about how he loves real estate because you buy a house, it appreciates, the renter is in there paying you rent every month, and yay, yay, yay. And I said, okay, how much down did you put on the last house? $17,000. How much net profit? I mean, after, having the lawn mowed, how much did you take home? And he said something like $200, right? $200 a month, or what's called a door, right? $200 a door. Well, even while we were sitting there, I just broke out my phone and I was finding a business we could have bought for the same $17,500. We found a dry cleaner, $17,500 down. This business would kick out $7,000 a month profit every month.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, Bubba, dry cleaning's not going anywhere. 17,000 and I make $200 a month, even if it's $500, even if you're renting a mansion and it's $1,000 a month, or for the same money, I get that dry cleaner and I make thousands a month. And then if I add one more service like laundry pickup, I add more thousands a month. Mm-hmm. Or if I say we deliver your dry cleaner to you for a $10 charge, I make more. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Plus, from the real estate side of things, I mean, I lost money with a couple that I bought at the time with the rentals. But the way I think about it now, like with a business, if somebody refuses to pay, you don't have to give them anything. If somebody refuses to pay in real estate, it's very difficult to get them out of the property, depending on where you are. And plus they'll probably trash it on their way out, and you can do nothing about it. It's insane.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to, rail against real estate. I just had some bad luck, but that's how it worked out. For me.
There's nothing wrong with real estate. There's really not. It's just most people don't know this is even an option. Mm-hmm. And when you compare apples to oranges, especially for first-time people, right? Like if you're sitting on 17,000, just to use that example, and you're like, man, I really want to get free. Man, I really want to give more to the church. I really want to spend time with my kids. Well, you're not going to do it buying one house. Like, I don't care how much time you spend on biggerpockets.com. You're not going to do it buying one house. Mm-hmm. But you can do it with that same amount of money buying that one dry cleaner.
That already has all the established, processes and relationships.
And then if you think about it, mm-hmm. just work at your normal job for 4 more months, take that $7,000 a month times 4, that's $28,000, and buy another dry cleaner. Now you got 2 locations.
Right.
And the first one paid for the second one.
That's crazy. It's really crazy to think about it, just the standpoint of starting a business versus buying one. It really starts to, I don't know, lately I've seen the light, so to speak, of how much easier of a process it can be to buy a business. Or simpler. I wouldn't say easier. I mean, there's still a lot of work involved, but it makes more sense to me. As unless you've got some specific dream, or you make, I don't know, Jimmy's spaghetti sauce and you want to sell it or something, you got like your own special recipe, then it makes a lot more sense. But the opportunity, or I guess I'll give my suggestion. I'd like your thought on this, Josh, but even if you have a dream that you want to own a specific type of a business, that typically takes quite a bit of work and some investment up front. It might be better to look at buying some businesses that you can grow over the next year or two, and then you can focus on that dream business that maybe you wanted to try to do, right? I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Josh.
No, absolutely. My dream job is to own a professional sports franchise. I mean, that's the goal, right? So I'm just not going to go out and do that. You have to do something else. But even to your point of your special Jimmy spaghetti sauce, even if you think about that, option 1, start it all yourself, right? Make it in the kitchen, buy some bottles. Hopefully it sells. Option number 2, have some other existing company private label it for you. Mm-hmm. Way more affordable. Option 3, buy that guy's spaghetti sauce company because it's already profitable. And then with the profit, make your spaghetti sauce. So now you have 2 spaghetti sauces out on the shelf. And either way, you're winning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got two more questions for you. I haven't seen anything else come in, but when do you decide to sell a company? Is there a point that you're like, hey, this is when you should sell it? Or is it just kind of, if it's going well, then it's up to you whenever you want to?
So anybody who's been to the BOL has heard me talk about the idea of always have an exit plan. Mm-hmm. When you get on an airplane, the first thing they show you is how to get off of it. The first day in kindergarten, you're doing fire drills on how to get out. If you go to a movie, before the movie starts, there's the exit. The biggest mistake business owners make, and I've seen this even with billionaires that I know, they don't have an exit plan. My suggestion is, before you even get into business, have multiple paths out of it. As an amateur private pilot, aspiring sort of aviator, which I'm now moved up to taking helicopter lessons.
Oh, nice.
Side note. Anyway, but when you're sitting at the end of the runway, you have multiple options. If we don't hit our rotation speed by this marker, we're going to go here. If the engine fails and we're 400 feet in the air, we're not going to do the dumb thing and try to circle back. We go here. So you always have an exit. The same thing is true when you own a business. You should have multiple exits. You should have the dream cash out. You should have the, hey, if this thing starts going sideways. You should have the, you know what, if my priorities change. And that way, when you hit any one of these, you can still say, should I leave now? No, things are still going good. Let's keep going. But that way you're not caught behind the 8 ball. And a great example of this, and you don't have to take my word for it, turn on an episode of Shark Tank. And Shark Tank is a great example because you might have a guy on there who says, hey, I created this new pen, right? And they'll say to him, how much money do you have in this? Oh, $100,000. How many have you sold? 2. Right? And they're like, well, do you have any intellectual property? Yep, I invented a new ink gel that's better than anything out there. Awesome. I'll give you $500,000 for 52% of your company. Everybody at home is saying what? Sell, you idiot, sell. Right?
Yep.
Meanwhile, what do you see? This guy going, no, it's my precious. I don't want to get rid of it, right? Because I need control of my company. Mm-hmm. You jack donkey. It would make way more sense to give a shark 52% of your company and make $7 million as opposed to own 100% of this thing and make nothing. Mm. But because he didn't already have a set of exit trajectories or exit contingencies, he didn't see the opportunity right in front of his face and he missed it. And if you don't believe me, I've actually had Kevin, Mr. Wonderful, on my show, and we talked about this, where it's people don't have an exit. They just don't. So make sure you have one before you get into it.
Okay, perfect. And then the last thing, Josh, is there anything that I might have missed in questions, anything else that you wanted to cover on this topic that you think they should know?
Yeah, but it would take about 7 hours.
Yeah, I have a lot of other questions, but I didn't want to get into some of the topics, but yeah.
No. This has been a great place to start. It's definitely a great high level overview. But there's a lot more to this topic. And that's why we're here, right? So Kingsbridge, it's kingsbridgebrokers.com. Great website. We help people do this all the time. We have a first-time buyers program where you're not just, buy it and then push you out the door. You're on your own. So yeah. And people can email us through the website, or everybody on this has my email. This might be posted. I might, ask you to share this elsewhere, but everybody who's watching live should have an email to contact us anyway. So there's that too.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. And if anybody's got questions, you can always, for some reason you don't have it, you can reach out to me. Hey there. I hope that you enjoyed this video with myself and Josh Tolley talking about how to buy businesses and so many different ways and the details that go into it. It was such a blessing to be able to get there, to be able to spend the time with Josh to talk about this topic, because as you can see, he's extraordinarily knowledgeable about it. He's an expert in this field. And so just really excited and blessed to have this time with him. But if you enjoyed this video, obviously I ask that you like, that you share, that you subscribe to the channel. That definitely helps me to grow the channel and continue to get the word out to other people. And it gets you notified of whenever I do come on with new videos and new content. Also, post your questions in the comments, or just post comments on this video. What did you think about it? Did you like this topic? Would you like to see more information on buying businesses and offline businesses or online businesses? I know we talked quite heavily about offline, but you can do this with online businesses as well. So I hope this has helped you. Please comment and do all that other stuff I mentioned. And I hope that you have a blessed day. Thank you.